to be the way it is. People don't want to talk about it.
Now, did
even amongst, when family members share an experience, it's not talked about.
Now, did that answer your question, James?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Thank you very much, Terry. Geez, that's a lot.
Now,
thanks, James.
Now, I'm going to take you back when you were in that camp spot that night. Now,
yeah, okay, 1977.
1977, which you were there with your buddy. You set up your tent and all that stuff. You probably were getting ready to cook your hot dogs or whatever. When did you notice those lights, and what did it look like, and how far away were they, and all that stuff?
Well, before I noticed the lights were one thing, but before we noticed the lights, I noticed something different. And this sounds cliche because you hear this, in on TV all the time and movies and stuff. But by God, it's true. That forest was alive with crickets and tree frogs when we set up camp, and we were chatting back and forth and kind of laughing and cutting up, and there was a lull in our conversation. And I noticed that the forest was just dead silent, and the crickets and tree frogs were loud enough to interfere with our conversation just 15 minutes earlier. And, even the breeze that we had enjoyed had stopped. And it was just a weird vibe. It was just unnaturally still. And it really did. It unnerved me. And I asked my buddy, I said, hey, man, is this normal? Listen to this. There's no sound anymore. It's just quiet out here. He's like, yeah, we've been laughing and cutting up. They'll be back. Just don't sweat it. The crickets, the tree frogs, they'll all be back. But if I'd have been there by myself, I'd have been in the car and been out of it.
Yeah.
And
so would I.
This is the time when my buddy turns his head to the left and said, hey, man, were those lights there before? And I'm like, what are you talking about? What lights? And I kind of got to lean back to see in back of him, to my left, his left, on the horizon, there are 3 tiny stars in a tight little triangle sitting just above the horizon. And each of these 3 stars is about as luminous as the North Star. So they're bright. And I'm thinking, those are too far above the horizon to be, lights from a shopping mall or a train. But they could be airplane lights, but they seem like they're immobile. They're not moving. So we're kind of excited about this. We're not scared. We're excited about it. And we're watching this thing, and then all of a sudden they move, and they rotate like they're on an axis, if that makes sense. They turn, and so the triangle was pointed up, and it turned where it's pointed, like at where the top is at about the 7 o'clock position. And then it starts to rise up into the air. And that's when I felt this wave of calm wash over me. And it really was kind of pleasant. I felt almost sedated. And I wasn't, all that anxiety that I had about the forest going quiet, that was all gone, man. It was all gone. I was just, I was more like a disinterested observer. I felt detached somehow from what was going on.
Did you feel like it was? Did it feel like it was not real?
Yeah, it felt like, because I remember I remember while we're watching these lights climb up in the sky, and they're moving slowly at first. From the campfire, I'm looking at this tree in back of our tent, and I'm thinking, man, one of those leaves should move just a little. You know, I know we lost our breeze, but there's got to be enough air movement for me to see. And they didn't move. And it was like I question, you know, am I looking at, is this reality or is this a hologram? I mean, I don't know. It was a strange vibe. It really was. And we watched this thing climb into the sky, and it was just a beautiful night. There were just 1 trillion stars out. So the starlight made the sky a deep blue color. And the area inside the triangle was jet black. So we could see that this was a solid object. It wasn't, you know, 3 lights moving in unison. And we watched as it climbed into the sky. And when it did, it seemed like it wanted to climb up and reach an altitude and then descend. And on its way up, it does these tumbling maneuvers where it would turn end over end, where we would see 3 lights, and then the top light would go down, and then there's just 2, and then it comes back up from the bottom, and it does this tumbling thing. And I don't know where this came from, but I really had this sense that this thing was moving with purpose. You know, it wasn't just tumbling in the sky. It was moving with purpose.
And it was coming towards you at this time?
Absolutely. It was clear that it was headed in our direction. And we were both in an odd state. I don't know what they did to us, but we were sedated somehow. We were content and unafraid, and like I said, almost like detached observers. And when this thing, we watched the shadow of it from the starlight. It cast a shadow, a triangular-shaped shadow, because we're up on the plateau. We can see the forest below us. And we saw this triangular-shaped shadow move across the forest and then come right and stop right over our heads at about 3,000 feet. And it came to a dead halt. And we're looking at this thing, and we're trying to... There are lights on each side, and it's big. It fills the entire meadow. I'd say it was a city block in length on each leg of the triangle. This thing was enormous. It's 3,000 feet over our heads, and there's no conversation between us. We're not freaked out. We're not, what is this? We're just laying there. And there came a beam of light from the center of the craft underneath that was a visible white light. You know how a searchlight looks when it cuts through fog? You can see a column of visible light.
Yes. Uh-huh.
Well, that's what this was like. But there was no fog. It was just a white column of light, about 6 inches in diameter, and it came from the center of the ship, and it came, boom, like that. It just like someone flipped a switch, and it landed square in the middle of our campfire. And I looked at my friend, and he looked at me, and we looked at this white light, and we didn't say a thing. You know, we're just watching this thing play out. And it stayed there. We didn't hear a thing. We didn't hear anything. It's just this light. And that stayed on for about a minute, and then flips off, like someone hit the switch. And then almost immediately afterward, from the same place underneath the ship at the bottom, in the middle, there came a laser beam about the diameter of a pencil, and it was purplish, bluish, and it would land in our campsite and stay in one place for like a tenth of a second, and then turn off and then reappear in a different location a tenth of a second later. So it's like, it gives the illusion that this light is dancing all around the campsite. And it hit my car, it hit the tent, it hit me in the chest a couple times. I know it hit my buddy. It just, and I had the feeling, you know, I had the feeling, hey, this thing's checking us out. It's scanning us. And that lasted a good 3 minutes. And then, again, like someone flipped a switch, and it was gone. And that's when my buddy, this is so out of character and so hard to believe, but he stands up and he says, "Show's over." And I remember thinking, all I wanted to do was go to sleep. That's all I wanted to do. I want to go to sleep, and I want to go to sleep now. And my friend had the same idea because he was dragging his air mattress behind him. He threw it in the tent on the right side, and he fell on top of it face down. And by the time I got there, he was already softly snoring. And I threw my air mattress in, and I climbed in. I wanted my head toward the door, but I didn't bother to take off my boots or anything, my shirt, nothing. I just plopped on this air mattress, and I was out. I mean, I was gone.
Well, Terry, so you guys, because our time, I got to get as much information as we can here in the next half an hour or so. Now, you, what woke you up? If I remember right, you woke up and you were, I think you heard a sound, something like a diesel train idling or something, and you looked and you saw like children running around. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I sure can. About 4 hours had passed, and I was asleep, and no dreams, just a deep sleep. And I was awoke by these bright lights. I mean, they were brilliantly like flash bulbs from an old school camera. They lit up the inside of that tent like a ballpark at night, and they were white, yellow, greenish, and kind of an amber or rose color. And they were not in any sequence. They were, intermittently just flash, 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 and then nothing, and then flash. And between the flashes, it was pitch dark in there. And in one of these flashes of light, I wake up and I don't have my wits about me, and I'm thinking, what is this? And I'm like, oh yeah, we're camping. That's right. And I'm thinking, what are these lights? And I'm thinking, it's probably the overhead flashing lights from a park ranger's truck, I bet. And then I heard this droning noise. And like you said, it sounded like a diesel locomotive. It was more powerful than it was loud, if that makes sense. You could feel it reverberate in your chest. And in one of the flashes of light, I noticed that my buddy is on his knees, and he's looking out the slit in the tent, and he's staring at something in the meadow. And I'm like, Toby, what is it, man? Is it park rangers? Who's out there? And he said, be quiet. They're still out there. And I'm like, who, Toby? Who? And in one of these flashes of light, I can see there are tear tracks down his face. This guy's been crying, for Christ's sake. I couldn't understand it. What could move this guy to cry? And I got to my knees, and I noticed that my boots were untied. Not only were my boots untied, and my socks were on sideways. Now, they teach you in the military to take care of your feet, and I always put my socks on correctly, lace up my boots correctly. I mean, they drilled that into us. And I didn't understand.